Well, we're in a good situation here then because they are trying to warm the room up, okay? Hopefully you'll get warmed up here as we go through this session. Okay, we are going to do a COD update. I'm Wood Mason. My partner in crime here, Marie Fitzpatrick, is going to work with me to get this delivered for you. We are going to talk about several things here, but first things first, we were supposed to tell you a little bit about ourselves, and Marie will do that. I work for Federal Student Aid, as does Marie. I'm on the Federal Loan School Support Team. I've been a Fed for about 38 years, and Department of Education for almost 23. And as I said last time, I am still sane, have not lost my sanity, and been around a while and hope to be around a while longer. So let's go ahead and get started on this so we can get you guys through here. There is Marie's contact information, followed by my contact information. And now that you have all those down, I don't see anybody taking a picture of this. In every session I've been, this is really funny. In years past, when we've had these sessions, when anything comes up on the screen that's important, people, you can see their heads going down as they're trying to write and copy stuff or mark in the presentations that they've copied or printed or put down. And now, in this day and age, instead of writing stuff down, you just take a picture of it. And then you've got it right there on your phone, right? Isn't that something? Kind of like, what is it, Star Trek, Star Wars, whatever it is. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to talk about some recent updates, some significant enhancements that came across this last summer, some system changes in the fall. We're going to get to Pell restoration and year-round Pell here. Towards the end of this, Marie's going to take over at that point. And then we'll finish up with a little bit about what's coming up for the next award year. Not a lot because we don't have any details yet really going into the new award year. We're still working on it, but we'll give you a little bit of a heads up of what we think is going to happen for next year. So with that, let's keep going through here, make sure this changer works. First thing I want to bring to your attention, and probably everybody is beyond any trouble with the sequester changes that we had, right? That's where we had to change the origination fees on direct loans and change the amount of the grants for the Iraq and Afghanistan service grant and the teach grants. The sequester, see, there's somebody taking a picture right here. Now, the sequester law is something that is around for 10 years, and I think we're in like the 5th or something like that, which means we're going to be in it for the next 4 or 5 years as well. This changed this last summer, sometime in April or May. We made a change to the code and COD on June 18th. And probably the next go-around is going to take place about the same time next year. But it's something that we need to keep in the back of our minds because sometimes it causes trouble when disbursements don't go out like they're supposed to towards the start of the award year, right? In the fall when your students come in. At this point in time, like I said, probably everybody has cleared all those up and they're all taken care of. But just be ready for it again next year about April or May or so. Here is the changes that were mandated this year for the teach grant and the Iraq and Afghanistan service grants. We also had a change in the interest rates for direct loans this past summer. It was published on May 30th, and they went up a little bit this year, unfortunately. But they are applicable to loans that were first dispersed after July 1st of this year and before loans dispersed on July 1st of next year. And that little asterisk there on the bottom tells you that the rate is fixed for the life of the loan, and these are the interest rates that apply to the loans that fall in that window up there on the slide. Okay, let's take a look at some of the stuff that happened in the summer. We updated and enhanced the batch search options and results to make it really nice for you now when you go into the batch screens and do some of your searches. 2016 and 17 are the award years that this is applicable to and forward. We made some changes and enhancements to the different types of searches you can see up there. The big one at the bottom there being that we widened the window of a date range search from 60 days, which sometimes made it a little bit difficult really to find what you're looking for, out to 6 months, basically 180 days. So that's a nice enhancement that happened to this particular part of an upgrade. And one of the things that really enhanced it and was added to it, you can see there on the right-hand side of the screen, we added a couple of columns to your batch search results. Not only do we have the students up there, right? Now we have the awards associated with those students and the disbursements associated with those students that tells you those that were accepted or rejected. In the past, we did have the students up there, and we also told you if there were any warning edits in those results. But we didn't say anything about the awards that may or may not have passed edits for those students that were accepted, and certainly didn't say anything about the disbursements for those students that were accepted. But that's changed now, and you've got the information readily available and viewable on the result of your search on the batch screens. Not only that, but we also brought up some more information for you when you get down and drill down a little bit into those rejects, telling you what the reject was and some of the details associated with that edit. So we'll identify what it is, we'll identify what you sent us, we'll identify the field that is an error, we'll give you the edit code number, we'll let you know by drilling down a little bit what happened to cause the reject for that particular record that you're looking at in that particular batch. We streamlined the closeout process as best that we can between the two programs, or three programs, Teach, Pell, and the Direct Loan Program. Different programs, different regulations, different ways of doing things, but we did what we could to get as much of it as we can alike between all of them. You can see up here that we now have a school balance confirmation closeout on the COD website. We have a reopen functionality that you can have access to reopen an award year if you need to make an adjustment, make a change, or something that you need to go back into that award year and do. And we also added some correspondence to the other programs, patterned after the Direct Loan Program, to keep you in the loop, if you will, of what's going on and where you are from the standpoint of balances and things of that nature. So we're doing what we can to kind of bring all that together, right, and help you in the respect of getting some of those things done. We've also got, as you know, the school account statements for Pell and Teach now that goes along with the Direct Loan Program. So we're trying to get as much likeness, if you will, between all three of the programs in COD. We also instituted a program year closeout reduction of direct loan awards. Now, if you have awards that you are no longer working, okay, it's your responsibility to make sure that those awards are cleaned up in the system, meaning that you have reduced all pending disbursements to zero, right? Adjusted any loan periods that need to be adjusted on those awards, and adjusted the loan amount to equal what was actually dispersed to that student. That's the school's responsibility. In the case that you don't do that for whatever reason, or in the case that the edits that we have in place now relative to some of those things don't catch what we look at in some of these awards, we're going to do a closeout or reduction, if you will, at COD to make sure that those awards are cleaned up on the system. That means that we're going to go in and do the reductions to the pending disbursements, adjust the loan periods if we need to, and adjust the award amounts if we need to. And that's all well and good. We'll send you back what we did, but you got to make sure that you are aware of this happening if you don't do it, because otherwise you're going to have a result on your database that's going to be different from what's on COD. And that's not a good thing. It's a bad thing. We don't want that to happen, okay? So be aware that we're going to make the changes if you don't, and be aware also that it's your responsibility to do that in the first place. Okay? Everybody with me on that? Okay. Let's go back to the fall of 2017, where we're just a couple of months ago. And we can see some of the things here that we've done to enhance the COD reporting capability. Now, I'm not talking about reporting data to COD. What I'm talking about are the reports that are available to you in what was your school news box that is now found in the COD reporting portal. A little bit different. We have, as it says up here, upgraded the platform. You're going to be going through the reporting portal to get to those reports. The formats of some of those reports have been changed. Some of the reports that you're used to seeing in there in the past have been retired. You'll see a few new reports, at least one new report, some modifications to some of the others as well that came about this past October, and I think you're really going to like the way that some of this looks when you see the new reporting portal. That EA up there for July 27th gives you complete details of what we did in October. There is also a session tomorrow, one more session, I think, dealing with this, and it goes into a little bit more details about what the changes were. As I said, we made some changes to the formats and delivery options of some of the reports. We have no longer made available pipe delimited or comma delimited without headers formats on some of the reports, and you'll see that the change is going to result in most everything being available in CSV or comma delimited with headers format, which just make it a lot easier to bring into Excel spreadsheets for your use at your school. You can move things around, headers, make headers different on the columns, and make it work for you the way that you want it to work at your school. Format options for the school account statements for all programs have been updated. And what that means basically is all three of them are now available in comma delimited with headers or CSV. The Pell and Teach Grant SASs have been in that format from the word get-go. They've always been available in a comma delimited with headers format. You can do that in this direct loan school for SAS as well, so that all three of them are available for you in that comma delimited with headers format. Let's keep going here. COD reports are now available for download. Well, I just talked about this, so I'm not going to talk about it again. Some of the reports, as we say up here, were modified to include additional fields. A couple of them have a little bit different record layout. We've added some elements to the direct loan actual disbursement list. We added your OPEID to the counseling report, and we changed a little bit the criteria of what's going to trigger and populate the duplicate student borrower report. Not a lot of change, but come to this session tomorrow on this and you'll see some of that information as well. I mentioned earlier that we retired some reports, direct loan reports up here that you can see, and Pell Grant and Teach reports that were retired. They're no longer available. We took them out. These changes, by the way, are the result of the input from you guys over the last few years. You've told us what reports you use, what reports are good, what reports help, what reports are a waste of everybody's time. And we had a focus group on that last year also at the conference. And the result is what you're seeing here in this screen and some of the other changes that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. We changed the format and display for dates in all of the reports in CSV format. Now you're going to be seeing them as calendar year and month and date, except that you won't see that on the school monitor report or any fixed length report that you ask for. Still, we made a change to that and enhanced it a little bit for you. We've also retired 3 of the master promissory note status reports that we've had in the past and combined them into one MPN status report, as you see up here. And you can see some of the reasons for the MPNs becoming inactive or expired on the screen up here, and they will be on that report if one of those conditions becomes evident in the past 30 days. Death, unauthorized signature, identity theft, linking a Direct Plus loan to an endorser, which makes that MPN a single loan MPN, and it goes inactive right then and there. Expired or will expire, some of those types of things. 10 years have passed, or a student perhaps has wanted to close his or her MPN as well. That's all going to be on that new MPN status report. That's the result of doing the others. This is a good one here. This always makes me crazy when I pull up a report. We're going to fix it, as you can see up here, so that when you import anything with numbers with leading zeros, they are going to be displayed properly. No longer are you going to have to go and monkey with the spreadsheet and change this and change that to get all those leading zeros to show up. We're going to do that for Social Security numbers up here and also school IDs by adding an equal sign and quotation marks to those fields. That'll make that leading zero issue or concern non-existent anymore. That's going to make it a lot easier for you to get some of that information in a little bit clearer way. A little caveat there at the bottom, it's not going to apply to the SAS or any fixed length reports. By now you're kind of getting the idea that we're kind of moving as much as we possibly can over to the CSV format, right? That's the direction we're going. Here's that other session, number 2, new COD reporting. Not new reporting to COD from a student data perspective, but new COD reporting from the perspective of a new way to get to those reports, the new enhancements that we've made to those reports. We're dealing with reports, not reporting student data to COD. Okay, that's what happened up until about now. We've got some things that's going to take place next year that we'll talk very briefly about later on after Marie tells you all about Pell restoration and year-round Pell. And I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thanks, Wood. Do I have a mic here? Oh, yeah, I do. Good afternoon, everybody. We know that it's later in the afternoon, and it's cold in here still. And we really appreciate you being with us because Wood and I do a lot of work behind the scenes, but only when we get out to be here with all of you does it really kind of energize us to keep doing what we're doing. So we appreciate you and appreciate you being with us. Again, my name is Marie Fitzpatrick. I work in the Grant Operations Division of FSA. I have been with FSA for 20 years this year. And I was at a school for 13 years before that. So I was in aid for 33 years now. Oh my God. Okay. And I thank God every day for my colorist. So Wood and I have been working together for 20 years. And if you've been to this COD update at another time, you may have seen some of us work together. They only bring me out when there's something to talk about with Pell. The last time I was at this conference was in 2013 when we were implementing lifetime eligibility used. So I have been at this conference, but I actually like it when there's not a lot to say about Pell. It makes my job a little bit easier. But we have been really busy this year, so let's get to it. Oh, that went back. Oh, it goes the opposite way. How about that? Okay, so for this section, I'll have two main sections on Pell restoration and one on year-round Pell. And for those of you that might have been on the other sessions that kind of dabble in these subjects, sorry, some of it will be a little bit duplicative, but not too much, hopefully. Okay, we're going to give you some resources. We're going to go through the process of determining eligibility for both schools and students. We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about our progress here in FSA with the Pell Restoration Project, any web changes, new edits, and we'll talk about the total eligibility used calculation changes that we've had. First, with the resources, we began communicating the policy guidance on this topic of Pell restoration and the reinterpreted previous policy guidance in December of 2016. And we followed up with our operational information in early April, and that's when we actually started to restore students' eligibility at that time. There was not much information in the COD technical reference, so you won't find much in there on that. But if you are looking for more information about Pell restoration, I do some perspectives and practical applications with some examples when we do a presentation that's session 4, and it's a presentation on transfer students coming from closed schools. I do it with Holly Langer-Evans, and she covers the SULA aspects of transfer students coming from closed schools, and I handle the Pell restoration aspects. So that is going to be Thursday, tomorrow at 9 a.m., and also Friday at 8:45 a.m. if you're interested in catching that. Okay. For Pell restoration, we rolled this out in 2 phases. One was somewhat manual process behind the scenes. For you guys, it would seem the same almost. We did that from April to about October when we implemented phase 2 with the COD 16.2 release. And we automated more of the restoration process, and we also added some web screens that really aren't for you guys. It was really for us in the background processing, but it's made it a little bit faster, and we hope to be able to process the restorations faster than we have been. But we did make it through almost every closed school and student eligible from 1995 through 2016 we've completed, which was almost 300,000 students have been restored already. It's like 295, 900 and something or other. I was given the number this morning. So still have a lot to go, but we are starting on the closed schools from 2017. We've started to analyze those. But let's go on to the next slide, and I'll tell you about the challenges we have with identifying our closed schools. So for a school to be eligible for their student population to be restored, the school has to be formally closed, and that means the main has to be closed. Not just like a satellite campus kind of closed, but the rest of the whole institution stayed open. The school itself has to close. So otherwise, they're not eligible for restoration. We also have to wait a certain amount of time for the process of closing out so that we have the right data in the systems to determine the eligibility for restoration. So we have to wait for things like the closed school to submit all of their final enrollment statuses to NSLDS, because that's an important part of the process. We have to wait for some of our program compliance team to do what they need to do with a closed school to determine whether everything's really set. All of the disbursements have been finally in the system. I can't restore Pell eligibility if the closed school hasn't submitted the disbursement, the final disbursements yet. So we do have to wait a little bit of time. So there will be a lag before you start seeing restorations for a student from a closed school. If you read it in the headlines that a school has closed last week, you won't necessarily see the restorations automatically for the students that attended that school. You know, it takes a few months at least, so keep that in mind. Identifying the Pell recipients eligible for restoration is also a process. We had to define which students would be eligible for the Pell restoration. We have done so in that they had to be eligible for Pell, obviously, and received it at that closed school, so that was the number one. That was an easy one. They had to attend that closed school within the last 2 calendar years prior to the school's closure. So if a school closed in 2016 and the student withdrew from that school in 2012 and received Pell prior to that 2012 withdrawal, that student is not eligible for restoration. We were trying to define those students that were really eligible and affected by that closure. If that student parted ways many years before that school closed, then they weren't really affected by the closure. Their termination with that school was long before the closure happened. So, and they have to have not completed their program at the school as well. So in NSLDS, we're checking to see whether they have a graduated status in NSLDS in order to be eligible. That's the only exclusion we really have. They have to have a valid enrollment status in NSLDS, and it has to be within the 2 years prior to the closing. Okay. Restoring the Pell eligibility, honestly, that is the easiest part of this whole process. We can do calculations in COD pretty darn quick. It's just figuring out who's eligible. That's the hard manual process, and that's the part I have to do. So once we restore the eligibility, then we go through the process of notifying the entities that need to be notified. So one would be the student, and we don't send every student that is eligible for restoration a targeted email. We only send what we have defined as the most affected. Again, we're using those air quotes as most affected students. They would be the students that had an LEU greater than 500% prior to restoration or had restored eligibility in the most current award year. They also, there could be a group of students that were above 600% and with the restoration has come down under that 600% limit. And so we would want to let them know that they now have restored eligibility. However, we excluded any student in COD that has already gotten some kind of processed graduate level aid. So grade level 6 and 7, we scanned our system for that. And we said, okay, we're not sending them any targeted email because what's the use of telling a graduate student that they have additional Pell eligibility? So we did exclude them. So not everyone got one. Next, we're going out to the affected current open schools that may have a relationship with the student that received the restoration. So we're doing it in a few ways. Edit 221, we're sending you those. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're also alerting you by a targeted email that tells you that there is a file share out there to go and pull down off the COD web that will tell you about the students at your school or that you have a relationship with that have been restored. And those students, that's a student in the current award year or the one prior. You've dispersed aid to that student in the current year or the one prior, or you may be listed in the highest CPS transaction number in one of the last 3 award years. And that's just to capture those schools that were not able to award or disperse Pell for that student possibly, but the student did apply to your school, but they just didn't get any aid and there's not any on the COD system. So we don't know, but if they did file a FAFSA with your school in the highest CPS transaction, we do include them there. So you will get some false positives on your file share, but we wanted to shoot a little bit wider to make sure we captured anybody that may be eligible that you might be wanting to look at. And the next way that you may know about a current affected student is the LEU adjustment screen. If you were on the Pell LEU screen, if you were counseling a student and you pulled up the Pell LEU screen, say a transfer student or something of that nature, you may see the adjustments that have now been recorded for that student. We'll go over those screens in a minute. Oh, actually, we'll go through them now. Sorry. It's been a long day. This is my number 4th presentation of the day. So this is the Pell LEU screen for 99% of the students. You're never going to see this little part at the bottom that says Pell LEU adjustment. Formerly, we were only having adjustments for dispute cases. There's an element in COD that you can dispute a Pell LEU. You think there's an error, something's wrong with it, and you would have seen an adjustment in this area. Now, with the 300,000 students that have had their LEUs restored, their eligibility restored, and their LEU adjusted, you will see many more of the Pell LEU adjustments. And blow that up a little bit for those of us that are blind. You will also see not only the new adjustment type of the closed school restoration on the web screen here, and that's been out there since April, but new in October, we added this little reverse arrow icon, which is really hard to see, but I highlighted it on the screen there. That will give you an indication that there's a history with that restoration that we did. There may be several iterations, and you can see it when you hit the hyperlink that's just to the left of the adjustment number, you come up with this pop-up screen that will give you the adjustment details as it is currently up top, and it gives you a little adjustment history down below. If there were any any changes made to that restoration, which we're hoping there won't be, but we did build for the possibility that there would be. There have been, I know, 34 students for sure that have had to have their restorations adjusted slightly because of things that happen, and we have to build in for those cases. So that is new. The warning level edit, this has also been out there since April, and you'll receive that in a response file because the student has undergone a restoration of a portion of their Pell LEU due to their attendance at this closed school. And this may appear in a response file that you get from COD for Pell Grant processing, for Teach Grant, for DL. Whatever you're sending us that comes in through COD has the opportunity to have that returned on a response file. And we did that because if the student wasn't previously eligible for Pell and you couldn't process Pell, perhaps they got a loan and you're working on that and receiving and sending us data on that. And all of a sudden the 221 would pop up and then you would know, oh, wow, this student may have Pell eligibility now, really? So we were trying to get you the information in any format that you'd pay attention to it. So we developed the edit code. Again, it's a warning edit. You don't have to do anything with it except possibly investigate. And review of the distribution of adjusted LEUs. So schools are encouraged to review the student's Pell eligibility if they receive a 221 or a file share with the student's information on it. When the LEUs are adjusted, they are sent to NSLDS. And if they meet the pre- and post-screening rules, a new ICER may be generated. So if the student changed from 650% to 400%, yes, that would meet the pre and post screening rules, and you would receive another ICER. However, if the student's restoration caused them to go from 200% to 150%, that's not going to cause another ICER to be generated. They're not in that danger zone in the upper levels of their LEU maximum, and we do not send additional, we don't generate a new ICER for that. Okay, onward and upward. Let's talk about the altered total eligibility, or TEU, calculation. This is probably the most far-reaching change produced by the Pell Restoration Project. If a student receives an adjustment, it actually changes the way COD calculates the total eligibility used threshold for that student for that award year to incorporate these adjustments that we've done into the calculation for that award year. So when we adjust, we're adjusting the bottom line of the LEU. But if we're in a current award year, that's going to affect how you can process further disbursements for that student that might come from the closed school. So we had to build in an element for that. So if the student had a restored eligibility for 17-18 for a school that closed earlier in the year, and you wanted to figure out how much that student is eligible for, first you have to see that the TEU maximum in here, it's usually going to be 100%. We're going to leave year-round Pell out of this. We'll talk about that next. Let's say 100%. We actually now, in COD, are calculating the TEU maximum limit at 100% plus the absolute value of the net of the closed school adjustments for that student for that award year. So we're going to add that in. If there was 33% restored for 17-18, then the LEU maximum threshold would not be 100%, it would be 133%. And we'd be editing everything that comes into COD off of that new limit. We'll go back to that when we talk about year-round Pell too. So we're going to go on to year-round Pell. Okay. We have a little mini agenda here. We'll go over resources, the general guidance that is not operational related. It's more policy. Then we'll do the AEI. We'll talk about the TEU calculations again. Some of the edits that are involved and changed with year-round Pell. We'll go through some of the web screens and the common record layout as well. Changes there. Okay, if you're still with me, hang in there. We're getting there. First time we talked about this, began communicating, this was policy guidance from the department on this topic, was back in the June of 2017 in the Dear Colleague letter, okay? So that provided the policy guidance, and that usually comes first. Before we can change our systems, we always need the policy guidance first. Then we announced our preliminary plans and timeline for implementing year-round Pell. That came the day after. I was ready with that. I had drafted the email, waiting for that DCL to post, and so the next day we went out with that guidance. And we gave you some indication as to what you could do in the meantime before we could get this all active and going in COD later on in the year. So hopefully that was helpful. There were significant updates to the 17-18 COD technical reference, and we posted those at the end of August. And then we had a lot of information in the electronic announcement that was posted in relation to our release in October. So the EA went out October 14th, that was posted that day, and our implementation, as Wood had indicated, was, I think it was October 15th, 13th to the 15th. It was that weekend. We start on Friday night and we implement until we get it right on Sunday. So it was that weekend. Last bullet, if you can't get enough of year-round Pell, you can, I am covering tips, tricks, examples, and there is a lot more policy that Carney McCullough goes over in session 19, We are only offering that one more time. We've done it twice already, yesterday and today are already over. And tomorrow we do it at 10:50 a.m. in Southern Hemisphere 2, if you want to catch that. Okay. Now, Carney McCullough does about, I don't know, 30 slides on policy in our year-round Pell session, and I have condensed it down to one slide because I'm not the policy girl. So I will just tell you that general information is contained in that DCL from the 19th, and I would highly suggest if you really want to look that up. Year-round Pell applies to 17-18 award year and forward. It does not change any other Pell eligibility requirements. It doesn't change how you define a payment period. It doesn't change how you define your academic year. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't change what modules you count in your summer term. Really, I mean, we've gotten a lot of questions on this. And it is really this simple. Two things. The student has to be at least half-time. It has to be 17-18 and forward. That's one thing. And the student has to be at least half-time at the time that they are receiving the portion of their Pell Grant for that award year that is between 100 and 150%. That's it. None of the other rules that we had for 2 Pels in an award year from 9-10, 10-11 apply. None of those restrictions. We didn't bring those back. They weren't really popular then. And we heard you. And we got them to not include those this time around. And I think from the questions that we've been getting, I think people are incredulous that it's really this easy. So please keep that in mind. Other thing is, anything we talk about in year-round Pell is actually also applicable to Iraq-Afghanistan Service Grant. We only have 216 recipients all told on that grant. So we don't have a lot of people awarding that, and we know that, but I do have to mention it, just in case. So those screens will be updated. Other things, school reports continue to display the additional eligibility indicator. We never got rid of them from 2 Pels in award year. We stuck them on the reports when we did 2 Pels in award year like 7 years ago. And we kept them there because, honestly, we didn't have the money to take them off the report. So lucky for us, they just sat there gathering dust, and they've been just showing up as blanks on your reports. Maybe you didn't notice, you just ignored them all these years, but they're back and they'll be filled in now, so you might want to pay attention. The first 2 bullets, the multiple reporting record, that's the one that gives you concurrent enrollment and POP information. The reconciliation report, and the last one, the POP report, all 3 of those are generated and sent to you. The Pell year-to-date record would need to be requested. We don't automatically send that to you. Okay. 4 main components of year-round Pell project: the additional eligibility indicator, the total eligibility use calculation, the edits, and the web screens. We'll cover all of those now. First and foremost, eligibility indicator, really important thing. This is the one and only data element that will determine your intent to award and disperse a student their eligibility between over 100% and less than or equal to 150. That's what we need. And it's really simple. It's true or false, but we need it. Only if the student is eligible, though. It's still an optional tag. If you don't have anybody eligible, don't send it to us. But if you do send it to us, it must either be true or false. It cannot be blank. It is a true Boolean functional tag. So it has to be filled in with true or false. Can't be blank, but you can leave it out and not send it to us at all if it's not applicable. So keep that in mind. Last bullet, really, really, really important. I get a lot of questions on this, especially from software vendors. Do I have software vendors in here? Raise your hands. Okay. All right. Well, then I can't talk about you. So, no, I'm just kidding. We get questions about this because we have people contact us said, why can't I just send them all in as true? What would the harm be? FSA will be monitoring schools that submit AEI as true for every single one of their Pell recipients. It's unlikely that every single one of your Pell recipients is eligible for additional Pell. Now, you may have some programs that run full-time all year round, they're accelerated, they're whatever, and you may have whole groups of students that are, if they're Pell eligible, they're going to be eligible for this, and that's great. However, I had large schools, 20, 40,000 strong kind of schools that said, we're just going to mark them all as true. I'm like, well, the problem with that, and we would be referring schools to compliance for review and sanctioning if we found schools just willy-nilly setting all of theirs to true, is that when I explain how COD evaluates this, you're really circumventing edits. You're circumventing the POP process in some cases and things like that. So we really need you to identify and say, this student is really eligible for this particular function, and I have evaluated and I am certifying that they are. If you're certifying by sending us the AEI flag that yes, they are, and in fact they are not, then we have a problem, and our auditors will have a problem with that. So that's my public service, and I'll go on. TEU calculation. TEU is the amount of Pell a student has received across all schools in one award year, and it's usually capped as 100%. We talked about that in restoration section. I already gave you the first one, formula, that was on the other slide. So let's go down to the next bullet. TEU is the maximum amount COD edits against with additional specific qualifiers based on circumstances. The AEI is going to be one of those qualifiers because we have to do something different if the AEI is true when we calculate the TEU. The other qualifier that we have, of course, is a closed school adjustment. We have to do something different to that TEU if there's a closed school adjustment. So we used to be able to just say, previous to this year, we used to be able to say, TEU is 100%, that's the maximum, and that's all it is. So COD is very busy in the background now trying to incorporate all of these changes, the AEI flag, the net of the closed school adjustments. So it's really making a difference in how we do this. And you'll notice this TEU calculation and this threshold that we set for every student for every award year based on their circumstances, that is what we produce edits off of. If you rely on our edits to help you to be in compliance, that is why the AEI has to be correct, or we can't stop you from shooting yourself in the foot. And you'll just have to be found out in an audit and then have to pay fines and all sorts of things that the COD system is constantly trying to help you be in compliance. That's what we're doing with these edits. So we're going to talk about these edits next. There's 6 of them. First 2 are disbursement edits. The last 4 are award edits. We'll look at each one individually. Edit 65, this is disbursement warning edit that alerts schools that the award was decreased to an amount less than the actual disbursement amount, and it puts the award into a negative pending status, which means that COD starts a little clock in the background for 30 days. You have 30 days to correct that. It happens when you send us award data and you don't send us any disbursement data to kind of correspond with that. If after 30 days you didn't go back in and change the disbursement amount, we automatically do it for you. Okay, next one. Edit 68, better known as the POP edit. That one triggers when a disbursement is submitted. There is an accepted actual disbursement on file at another school that is greater than 0, and the total disbursed amount for the student for that award year across all schools is greater than the allowable total eligibility used. The reason that we had to alter this edit is because it used to be 100%. Now we have to check the AEI flag in terms of this edit to figure out whether we're editing for POP at 100% or are we editing for POP at 150%. And we'll go in and talk about that a little bit more. If you come to the Pell, year-round Pell session that I do with Carney tomorrow, we cover that in detail, and I give examples of POPs and AEI flags and changing them and consequences and all sorts of stuff. It's really fun, much more entertaining than this very dry session. So, no, I am not casting dispersions on you. No, I am the boring part of this presentation. You are definitely not. But I have to do the tedious stuff this year. Normally, when you had to do SULA, you were the tedious one. Now I'm the tedious one, so. Okay, so for the rest of the edits we're going to cover, we're going to talk about just the award edits. These are not disbursement, these are award edits, so keep that in mind. The edit 172, I'm reading 39, and I'm saying 172. That one is very similar to edit 39, except it adds in the AEI of true. So it's saying that the limit has been exceeded, and the limit now with the AEI of true is 1.5 times the scheduled federal Pell Grant, or SFPG. So this is very similar to the 39 edit, except this is for the AEI being true, okay? 173, so 173, 174, 175, these all talk about when the AEI is changed from true to false. And you get these edits usually when you set the AEI from true to false independently of every other figure that you've sent us previously, like the award amount or the dispersed amount. Willy-nilly, all you changed and send to us what the AEI changed. So you'll see these series of edits. So 173, also, it's for rejecting. It's a rejecting edit or a correcting edit, depending on what option you are in your system. If you don't know if you're a correcting school or rejecting school, you can look it up on the COD school options webpage for Pell. I would say about 95% of our Pell schools are correcting schools. More and more, though, are going to rejecting, and that's usually dictated by your software vendor. They don't like it that we correct stuff and send it back to you. They like it to be a little bit cleaner. They want whatever they sent to us to come back to them in the response file. So if you don't know, software vendors might be able to tell you, too, what you are, because sometimes they do that. So in this case, you've changed it from true to false, but the current amount, current award amount is over 100% of the student's scheduled federal Pell Grant at this point. So we'll send you that. Edit 174, similar to the edit 65 we renewed, but this is where the award level, at the award level equipment, it triggers when the AEI is changed from true to false and the award amount is now less than the actual disbursed amount. So imagine you're a correcting school. You change the AEI from true to false, but you don't send us an award amount. We go ahead and we correct the award amount down. We send it back to you, but because the disbursements weren't sent to us, we can't change the disbursements and correct those down for you. So you now have an award amount that is less than the total of your actual accepted disbursements in that case. We'll look at an example where edit 73 and 74 hit. Correcting school submits the award with an AEI of true, and the award and disbursed amounts total 120%. So step one on this screen shows the school submits, and step two will show what COD system is storing. It's the same in this case. So batch one, we're doing okay. Step one and step two, everything matches up top. But in batch two, The school changes the AEI to false, but does not change any of the award amount or the disbursement amount because they're not submitted. So edits 173 and 174 are triggered accordingly, but you'll see what is stored in the COD system because they're a correcting school, just like I said. The AEI is now false in that bottom line. The award amount that is stored is 1,000, not the 1,200 prior. And the actual disbursement amount is still at the 1,200 because we can't reduce that down because the disbursement block was not sent to us on that submission. So the last edit that I'll cover, 175, that triggers when the AEI is changed from true to false with disbursements greater than 0, and there is a Pell Award at another school, and the total eligibility used is now greater than 100%, plus the net accepted, the closed school adjustments. So when we look at that, this is very similar to Edit 68 in a POP situation, but this is the award level edit equivalent that now incorporates the fact that you've changed the AEI from true to false. It's the last edit I'll cover. Now I'm going to go on to the web screens that we altered in October, in our October release, to accommodate for the AEI flag. Some of these are just coming back. We reinstituted them on some of these screens where they were for 2 Pels and Award year 7 years ago. So first of all, these will go quickly, so we're almost done. The Create Award page for Pell and Iraq-Afghanistan Service Grant, the AEI is located at the bottom just above the school use only field. And it's found in the very same location for the Update Award page. Moving on, we're going to go to the Create Award for a Rejected Records page. So if you had a rejected records and you link through that hyperlink and want to go back and correct your rejections, it is at the very bottom of the page there, right above the school use only again. Okay. The Pell Award detail page on the web screen, it's right above the collection status indicator, probably something you never look at. It's only filled in if you have a student in overpayment and that student has been paying on that overpayment. So we look at that there. Onward. Batch record response page. It is located right under the award amount in this point. We have the red arrow that indicates that. Same place on the batch record view page, right under the award amount. And this is my favorite. There are 2 changes on the person Pell information page. First, indicated by the red arrows, the tilde to the left of the award amount indicates that the award has an AEI of true. So this is also the kind of indication we used when we did 2 Pels an Award year several years back. The problem with that is that in 9-10 and 10-11, we used the tilde for the additional eligibility. Then we stopped having that because that went by the wayside, and we had the new lifetime eligibility used, and we said, hey, we'll use a tilde for that too because we're not using it for the additional eligibility anymore, so we threw it up there and used it when the lifetime eligibility used was greater than 600. Well, now the tilde's back on this screen, and we're like, well, we can't have the tilde mean 2 different things on the same screen. That would confuse people. And we said, well, why don't we throw in there the new alert symbol that we've been using throughout our systems in NSLDS and things like that, that neat little triangular orange icon with the exclamation point in it. We didn't have that like nifty icons back like 7 years ago. So we didn't have that option, and now we do. So we said, okay, we threw it up there now for the LEU over 600, and you'll find it on this page, Person Pell Information page. You'll also see it on the Pell LEU History page. Just a couple more slides. This is for all those deep down system people that really want to examine the XML format and tags for this. The additional eligibility indicator is located right between enrollment date and student eligibility code in the award block of the XML tag for in the Pell block. In the Pell block, in the award block, right above the disbursement block. All right. And it's in the same exact place on the common record response that we return back to you. So I am done with year-round Pell. And we'll talk about what's coming up for 18-19. And as Wood indicated before, we don't have much to say here, unfortunately. We can tell you a few things. We know that we're going to have 3 releases next year for sure, just like we did this year. Well, 3 main releases. We always have a few correction sub-releases, emergency type things. But we will have the main one in early spring, and that will be the one that we always have to set up for the new year for 18-19 processing. Along with that, we will be incorporating some of the additions that we have now with campus-based programs that are moving to COD. Did anybody go to the campus-based session? So you heard enough about that. We're not covering any of that here, but that was quite enough to include in a release. So some of the other things that we may need for grants and loans had to be pushed off to early summer, and we'll be seeing some of those changes in early summer. And there's a handful of school-facing enhancements. I'm hoping, keeping my fingers crossed, that the Iraq-Afghanistan service grant is going to go in there as a full-fledged program at that time. But they've promised me before, and we've been pushed for other reasons. So sometimes things take priority. And then the third COD release we'll have in early fall. We're looking at R2T4 to move into a COD module with that implementation. At least that's what's on the schedule currently. We'll keep our fingers crossed on that nothing else comes up in Congress that would waylay something like that. So with that, we have about 10 to 15 minutes for questions. And we do have mics set up at both of the aisles. So if anyone has questions, we'd love to hear them at the mic instead of 50 people rushing us, because we think that you all benefit from the questions your colleagues ask, because you may have the same question. So we'd love to answer it once instead of 8 times at the podium. So please, go ahead. I guess we don't have a mic. Okay, we're going to fix that. Okay. Sure, we'll try the other mic. Thank you.
So this is actually a question about a potential future enhancement that I asked in the cybersecurity session as well.
Okay.
I was wondering if COD or CPS would ever consider replacing the SSNs that are embedded in key fields with the FSA ID. So, I mean, that would eliminate a lot of the problems that we have with testing, just the excessive administrative burden with testing for our systems.
I have heard that before. And I don't know. It would not be up to us, certainly, but yeah, cybersecurity was probably the best place to bring that up, because that's where they would dictate what we need to do in COD. Whatever they choose would be the best in terms of security. That is what we will do. The problem with that, usually with our system, is because we interface with so many other systems. And really, it's CPS that interface with a lot of different systems, like the IRS, and so security and selective service. Those are the ones that are the hard ones, because unless they all go to something that we can all somehow in the background link up to into a key identifier so that all of our systems can communicate, It's not just COD, but it's the other systems as well. Because we could make independent choices, certainly, but if we can't communicate with all the other systems we need to, like CPS and NSLDS, and then CPS having these other structures that they need to communicate with, that's usually the hard part.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
On the topic of year-round Pell.
Yes.
Since it would be 150% and the amounts during that last distribution would often be uneven, can we award students to the nearest cent?
Pell can always be awarded and dispersed in cents. It is the only program, well, an ISG, but yeah, we love cents.
Beautiful. Our school does it in dollar amounts now, and I'm like, it seems odd.
A lot of schools do, and a lot of bursars' offices like it that way, and a lot of software vendors like it that way, but yeah, we take cents. I test it to the penny.
Okay, that's awesome.
I test percentages to the penny too, so, yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
The person at our office who does the COD processing wanted me to ask, is there going to be a COD schema change for 17-18 or 18-19?
18-19, yeah, we're done with 17-18. Is there going to be a schema change? I don't know of any at this time. We don't have any plan for 18-19 right now.
All right, great, thanks.
Sure.
Hi, I have a question regarding the Pell closeout process that was added, which is similar to the direct loan closeout where you go in and...
The Pell SAS report.
Yeah, when you're done and you certify that your ending balance is 0 and you submit that, which is new, used to be only in direct loans that you guys added. For direct loans, we have longer to finish up because we sometimes still have unclaimed funds where students didn't cash checks and things like that. But we were told by COD that for Pell, we had to do that closeout process by September 30th. Is there any possibility that we could have a little bit longer in case we have to do returns so we don't have to keep reopening?
Well, the time frame in which you need to reconcile your Pell process for an award year has not changed.
Right.
The tools we give you have changed, but the time frame has always been September 30th. That's regulatory. So, but nothing really has changed in how you can process Pell. You can still have extended processing requested and things like that. So, and you can still always send downward adjustments. That hasn't changed. So I'm not sure what you need relief on.
I'm not referring to that process.
Okay,
We have
maybe I don't
everything
understand. I'm sorry.
reconciled, everything's down to 0.
Yes.
But there's now in COD where you actually go in and certify that you're done,
Right.
like direct loans has been, and it's brand new for Pell that just started.
Right.
Just that piece. Can we be down to 0 by September 30th and just not do that last step of certifying until later in case we have a downward, so we don't have to keep asking for reopening?
Okay, so the downward adjustment you can still do even if you've certified.
Okay.
It's the upward adjustment, but that's, again, always been the case. Even without this certification,
Okay.
the downward adjustments will still go through even if you've certified.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi.
So my question's about the year-round Pell.
How did
and
I know?
I'm confused. I don't know
Okay.
if it's because I'm freezing or what.
You and
but-
me both.
Yeah. So on the additional eligibility indicator,
Yes.
you say that schools may submit the AEI as an optional tag.
It's an optional tag. You don't have to submit the tag at all. It could be absent.
So even if we're paying additional Pell
No.
above, well, that's what
No.
I'm confused
So
about.
if the student's not eligible for anything.
Okay.
Your max is going to be 100% for this kid because of whatever reason.
Right.
You don't have to send us an AEI flag at
Sure,
all.
Okay, that makes sense.
If the student's eligible, you must send us one
Okay.
for us to accept it.
That's what
So
I needed clarification on.
It's optional in that you never have to send it to us
As long as they're
as
not
long as the
getting-
student's not eligible.
Got it.
And then
Okay.
it's not optional anymore. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry if I wasn't clear. I will make sure, I'll make a note to be more clear on that one next time. Anybody else? Now, you're not all going to rush the podium, are you? When I say we're done? But I do appreciate your patience. I know it's late, and we love it when you stick here with us. Thank you for coming, and you have our contact numbers if you have more questions. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.